A couple months ago, we saw the hints of this latest development occur with the announcement regarding Street Fighter League Japan, where they put out a notice from Capcom Fighters here about how you can leverage Street Fighter League Japan in your own streams and in your own content. And essentially what they're saying is you can't show shit for Street Fighter League Japan unless you only show this one little square over the timer, essentially making it so that if you were to restream Street Fighter League Japan or make content regarding it, it cannot include any of the actual broadcasts. You could only include things like the timers for watch parties. And apparently this is like a normal thing to do for watch parties in Japan and Japan streaming culture, where you would have something to allow viewers to synchronize the main broadcast on one screen or in one window, and then they can have the watch party of the streamer they like in the other window, synchronize the two feeds, get the commentary and input from the restreamer, and also have the original broadcast as a way to distribute views to both the original broadcaster and the restreamer. And apparently this seemed rather normal to the Japanese audience, and of course the rest of the world was like, what the fuck is this? And there was a lot of discussions around this, a lot of negativity surrounding it, and it further solidified how Street Fighter League Japan is essentially a Japanese only product, because what this prevents is it prevents other content creators and like Street Fighter and fighting game content aggregators, I would say, sort of like myself, Sage, Ambroski, whoever, from really reviewing or doing any content about Street Fighter League Japan while it's hot and relevant, right? Like, say there's an amazing set I wanted to do an analysis of, or like do a watch party of the broadcast even the day after and watch it on stream to review the matches, get caught up with the competitive scene, and then maybe use that to produce more bespoke edited content for YouTube and, broadcast that to the American audience for like on my side. That's not allowed, right? So it's all being done for the sake of locking down the broadcast so that the source of the viewership for any of the actual content is from the audience straight to the primary source. And I think overall that probably hurts its cultural relevancy. However, what it ends up doing is I think it ends up securing the original content producers, Capcom Fighters, and their content platforms as being the primary source for the Japanese market. They're essentially locking down the Japanese market at the expense of the greater reach that occurs through these other content sharing mechanisms that we come to know in the rest of the world and in like the American audience and like, content creators in Latin America, so on and so forth, South America, right? Generally, the way it goes is we might crunch down the 5-hour stream, highlight some moments, and serve as a content aggregator to like keep the consciousness of the community, alive in terms of understanding and following these other events. I didn't expect it to go this far, but they decided to triple down on this approach, which is something I predicted when reviewing this incident with Street Fighter League Japan. I made comments like, yeah, I kind of see what they're going for. They've already done pay-per-view in Japan for Street Fighter League playoffs. I think this is a move by Capcom to more lock down their control of their IP and their content broadcast and, really 100% monetize and control their production in the Japanese audience. And now with Capcom Cup 12, they've announced today that not only are they selling tickets for live in-person seating, which they did last year as well at the same Kokujun Arena. I'm butchering the name, please. Amazing arena, amazing venue. But not only that, they're doing pay-per-view for the actual broadcasts. And if you don't do the pay-per-view, it will be available for free a week later. If you don't know, 6,000 yen, if you're paying that for Capcom Cup 12 and Street Fighter League Worlds, the bundle for both of those broadcasts, they're doing Capcom Cup, I believe, first before Street Fighter League Worlds again. That is 6,000 yen is around 40 USD. So you would have to pay 40 USD to get the full product live, which you got for free last year. And I would assume going to be a very similar broadcast to last year, I would assume. Now, obviously, most people are pissed. Most people are pissed about this. And yeah, I get it. I think, once again, this is another step where I was talking to a few people off stream about this, right? I did some tweets and I was texting a few people about trying to understand where Capcom's mind is at. And usually when I talk about this stuff publicly, I take a very pragmatic approach and I'm more like analyzing what Capcom is thinking more than my personal opinion on all this. Because what I'm seeing out of this strategy, and I've been saying this for a long time, is I think more and more with the explosion of Street Fighter 6 in Japan, the absolute absurd numbers of engagement and viewership from the Japanese audience. I don't have the exact numbers. I have some examples I'll bring up. I don't have the exact numbers to prove this, but my perspective is that the Japanese audience dwarfs the rest of the global audience combined in terms of viewership, in terms of engagement, in terms of tournament entrance, at all levels. If you combine the rest of the world, it is less engagement on every level than what you see with Japan alone. And even in this announcement on the Capcom Fighters, an English and usually run by Capcom USA account, even the prices are all in yen. And this is a global event. Capcom Cup has qualifiers online. The World Warrior program, literally designed to ensure that players from all corners of the globe, regardless of their economic position and ability to travel, should be able to have at least one representative, so one person who's given a shot to qualify. Then the price is in yen on this flyer, and that's around $40 USD, 6,000 yen. $40 USD means very different things depending on where in the world you are from. Very, very, very different things. For people in certain regions of the world, this is just an absurd price to pay to be able to watch a broadcast. Absolutely fucking absurd. It doesn't take into consideration at all the global audience, that it's almost contradictory. They're cultivating this global audience via the World Warrior program, and then they're pricing out all the people from that region who would be excited to watch their representative from a region that normally doesn't get a shot at these sort of things because maybe the tournament infrastructure isn't there, the players can't afford to travel as much. Finally, they get a representative to go to Capcom Cup, and then you price out all the spectators from back home from watching. So what was the point in the World Warrior program in the first place? Right? Like, what was the point? And what I'm seeing here is, I think since 2020, even pre-COVID, right, the World Warrior program was promoted at Capcom Cup 2019 pre-COVID. So there was already going to be an element of the Pro Tour with points, and in addition to some online reserve spots with World Warrior. That was demoed in a slideshow announcement after Capcom Cup 2019. So they were already making this pivot in that era, 2019 to 2020, to start to incorporate more of a global audience. Since the explosion of Street Fighter 6's popularity in Japan, and the success of Street Fighter League Japan itself, pay-per-view for Street Fighter League Japan amongst the Japanese audience, I feel that Capcom, and this is what I've been preaching for a while now, I've been saying the business is going to Japan. I feel like Capcom is starting to pivot more and more and more to exclusively focusing on monetizing and addressing their total addressable market, which is now Japan. I think they're starting to give up on this whole global world circuit view. That's what it feels like to me. I think they're just like, wait a minute, why are we trying to go for the world when more than half of our viewership and engagement comes from our home country right here? And culturally, from my understanding, I would like input from the chat and other people who might know more than me. This is my cursory knowledge. I'm not an expert on Japanese culture by any means whatsoever, but from what I've seen, is it seems like the Japanese audience is also much more willing to abide by these rules, to follow, like, oh, the regulations say that we should do watch parties only with this timer. That's no problem. We will happily abide by those rules. Oh, we get to pay access to view Street Fighter League Japan. We enjoy this product. We'll happily pay this price to participate. Capcom Cup is 6,000 yen to watch. That's totally fine. I enjoy Capcom Cup. I enjoy Street Fighter 6. I will happily pay this price to support it and to legally partake in it. Whereas the rest of the world is like, hey, you've given me this for free for years with advertisements included, and the broadcast quality isn't increasing, and I'm not getting more for, you went from free to $40 and I'm not getting more for that cost. I'm going to pirate this or move on. That's a big cultural divide as well. So I almost feel like Capcom is hitting the point where they're like, fuck it, time to learn Japanese, buddy. You like Street Fighter 6? You like Street Fighter esports? This is where it is. And we are focusing on our Japanese audience. And that is where we're actually going to be able to make a return on investment. And if you want to partake in this, hey, maybe come do Street Fighter League Japan if you're a pro player. This is what we're going to continue to focus on in developing. That is the only rationale I could have for them going this route. That is the only rationale I could have. I was talking to a few other people about this, and some people's perspective is that they think that Capcom feels that this will be successful globally. As in, yes, some people will not pay for it. However, they will be fine watching it a week later, and there will still be a large number of engagement from the global audience paying to watch this because they care so much about Capcom Cup. I don't believe that to be true. I don't believe that's their perspective. But if that is actually what Capcom thinks, if the suits making decisions think that this will be successful and get engagement from a global audience, that is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. That is fucking dumb. I totally understand if they say, screw it, we think we're going to make enough money from the Japanese audience paying for this that we can stand to lose on our global audience and we'll be okay and will be a come up for us. And this is our strategy. At least I see what they're going for. I don't think that'll be great overall for the long term. I think that's short-sighted as well. But if they honestly think that the rest of the world is going to happily pay 40 USD to watch this, including regions that, imagine fucking Blas right last year in Chile making that run, and no one in Chile was going to see that till a week later. The whole point of watching these events is to partake in it live. You need to be part of the energy when it's live. You need to be part of the discussion when it's live. No one cares a week later in that sense. If it's a week later, people don't want to watch the event. They might get a summary of it, a recap. They might look at the results. They might discuss it a little bit. They might look at it as a stat point. But people aren't going to watch the broadcast in full a week later. They might watch one highlight, but no one's going to want to watch the whole... No, who watches the whole Super Bowl a week later? Who does that? That is not a thing. You got to be part of it live. That the suspense of not knowing what's going to happen and being part of that experience with everyone else is the whole point. Has anyone watched Game 7 of the NBA Finals a week after the fact? It doesn't make sense. So that's the only two rows I see. And so if Capcom is honestly suspecting that they're gonna like make this a successful project and get decent amount of engagement from people paying globally, I think that's insane. And that's dumb as fuck. However, if they say, you know what, we don't really care because we think we're going to make more money and this is going to be sustainable and we're going to focus more on being an insular esport for the Japanese country and Japanese audience, then I think that sucks for everyone in the world. But at least I can understand what they're thinking from a business perspective. Like I'm wondering what they're thinking from a business perspective, really. What up, broski? What'd you say? If there's one thing I've learned from Street Fighter League NA and Street Fighter League EU is that the people love finding out about results after they happen. Yeah, Street Fighter League NA USA has already failed because of the fact that it's pre-recorded. Even matches that haven't been aired, but you know that they're pre-recorded, already ruins that suspense. It already kills it. Even from a business perspective, it's dumb as fuck. Yeah, maybe. I wonder if that's the gamble they're making. Like, this is what I've been suspecting for a while, is that more and more you're going to see an increase in the business of Street Fighter moving towards Japan, players moving to Japan. Street Fighter League Japan is very successful. The only region where I feel like this has, as an esport, really taken roots has been Japan. So, like I said, I don't know if this is a gamble on the Japanese audience caring or what. So, people were also making comments about doing a boycott. And once again, I don't think the world boycotting this matters. If Capcom was smart enough to understand that the world is already going to not pay for this, in that world, then a boycott outside of Japan doesn't matter because it's all about if the Japanese audience bites or not. Now, if Capcom really did expect everyone else to be like, yeah, at least some of you guys are going to pay for it, then I think that would make a difference. But I would be so shocked if Capcom really suspected that this would go over smoothly. But either way, yeah, I think the pivot to focus too aggressively on only Japan, I don't know if that's going to work long term either. I don't know. $40 is crazy expensive. And I'm not even one that's totally against doing paid broadcasts. I am not actually against that entirely. However, you have to split the difference somewhere. If you're going to take the same broadcast, which is full of ad breaks, full of downtime, and not up the quality or offer anything different. You're just making people pay for something that was free originally, capturing the market, and then trying to squeeze what you can't get out of them. And we see that strategy all the time in tech startups and other things, but those things tend to disrupt your daily lives and force you to not really have any other options before they start squeezing you for all your money. This is an entertainment product. This could go away instantly and the world would keep spinning with no issue. The Capcom Cup could disappear overnight and it wouldn't matter, right? So it's a very dangerous play. It's a really dangerous play. Yeah, so I made a tweet. This was the direction Street Fighter 6 esports has been heading with the success in Japan, but feels really premature. No regional pricing for the World Championships with online qualifiers from around the globe is also rather tone deaf. Street Fighter 6 esports becoming more Japan first product. Yeah, it just feels like the focus is on Japan entirely. One other thing I wanted to point out is I still don't think a lot of people outside of Japan really understand just how big Street Fighter is in Japan and where this, I don't know if you want to call it confidence, delusion, sense of delusion comes from. But if we look at like their viewership, just glancing at Kawano's YouTube, every day he uploads a stream highlight and he cracks anywhere from 250,000 to 500,000 views. We can look at, this is Naru with his Jamie cracking an easy 200K on the regular. Tokido, he's cracking 150, 120K on the regular. Going the popular ones are getting near 1 million. I just want to be very clear. The Street Fighter 6 players in Japan are getting more viewership than our biggest content creators elsewhere. Maximilian doesn't get this much viewership. Sagem doesn't get this much viewership. The Street Fighter 6 content creators are eating, and they're like the pro players. And these are stream highlights. This is highlights of them practicing the Street Fighter 6 game on stream and maybe discussing a strategy or discussing an element. Like, this is not them doing some heavily edited or out of the norm content that has some kind of hook or some kind of novelty. Generally, a lot of this, not saying they don't do great content, but generally a lot of this is stuff really grounded in the competitive mindset and understanding the game of Street Fighter 6. Generally, it's not meant to be like some shit that is like, haha, hee hee, I played with some famous celebrity and if I lost the game, I shaved my head. You know, it's not something that requires some lowbrow hook to get a general audience engaged. It's people watching this because the players are good and their insights on the game are interesting to a large audience in Japan, which does not happen to that scale anywhere else in the world. So I want to point that out. And we can even go further, like the viewership numbers across these different events. So Capcom Cup 11 was actually really successful in Japan, I think. And I think that's because it was in Japan and featured a great storyline, Kakeru versus Blas. Kakeru defending the home turf in Japan. Young Prodigy coming out of nowhere playing with Ryu. 354,000 peak viewership. That was really good, right? Compared to EVO Vegas, 320,000 peak viewership. EVO Japan, 299,000 peak viewership. And but if we just go to instead a Japan only influencer event like Legendus, 306,000 peak viewership. Average viewers 261,000. The average viewership for Legendus, which is a influencer-run Street Fighter event by FPS Shaka, got more viewership than EVO Japan, and the peak viewership is comparable to Capcom Cup 11 and EVO Vegas, and the average viewership shits on it and was only aired for 7 hours. This is a Japan-only event. So I just really want to point out that these events that are insular to Japan are still killing it. And there's multiple of these. Yeah, these are influencer partnered events. Legendus, I believe, this one was only the influencers playing, but some of the different formats of these include the team tournament one, which has the content creator playing the same character as the pro player. So they're not these. I just want to be very clear. I think some people hear these influencer events and they start imagining IShowSpeed fucking playing City of the Wolves with KSI for one random ad. You have to understand that these guys are legit players. They're like 1,800 MR players. They're collaborating with the pro players. They're learning the game. They're respecting the game. They partake in the tournaments. They enter the World Warriors. Like, they're part of the culture. This isn't like a one-off novelty thing that famous people are getting people to enjoy Street Fighter 6. They have integrated fully into the world of Street Fighter, and they respect and prop up the pro players and look to them. Like, it's not just a novelty thing. It's not a one-off. A lot of these influencers have become a part of the FGC and have grown the FGC heavily due to that. So I just want to give that perspective on Japan, just how big it is. Like, these insular events can rival our biggest tournaments that we have to offer in comparison, which is nuts. So I just want to make sure people are clear on that. But, you know, there's other ways to monetize this. Like, a big part of this is, you know, Capcom Cup is a $1 million prize pool. They spend tons of money on the esports circuit, and obviously the goal of this is for the publisher to make money. So how does Capcom make money from the Capcom Pro Tour now that they're inflating the prize pool like crazy? It used to be $250,000 for first place. Now it's 4 times that much, and there's still bigger pricing for the rest of the tournament itself. How does Capcom actually fund all this? Well, the goal is obviously to sell copies of the game, sell DLC, and get customers from the advertisements of the esports initiative to pay for this. Is that going to be driving enough sales to make up the difference? I don't know. Maybe. These numbers are not very clear. But generally, for the esports bubble in general, the only party that stands to potentially make any money has always been the publisher. I've talked about this many times. The teams, all that shit, outside of maybe some certain leagues that have solved it, are for the most part flushing money down the toilet, right? All those celebrities who invested millions of dollars to prop up esports teams during like the 2016 and beyond era before COVID, they all just flushed millions of dollars down the toilet. They're never going to see that money back. It never made sense except for the publishers who are using the esports division to advertise their game to get more sales of DLC and sell more Chun-Li costumes, right? So it could be argued that this pay-per-view is a move to help fund the Capcom Pro Tour itself and help to make a return on investment on all of this whole production. And, you know, if only there was a way to do that. If only there was other ways to fund this $1 million prize pool. Well, it turns out, you know, other games have solved this, right? Dota, first international, drew attention due to its staggering $1.6 million USD prize pool, the highest prize pool of any single esports tournament at the time. Since 2013, the community has been able to contribute to the prize pool by purchasing Compendium or Battle Pass, where 25% of the sales go to the prize pool. So they have achieved this level of esports success in other games via, you know, driving sales with battle passes and DLC content. If only we could do the same. Oh wait, we have. We have done that. Since Street Fighter V, we've had the Capcom Pro Tour DLC package, which apparently has generated over $100,000 for the Capcom prize pool. This was November 21st, 2016 for the first Capcom Pro Tour. This was part of the model that was done in the past. 30% of the proceeds went to the Capcom prize pool. So it seemed like how this was done was that this would be contributing to the prize pool without actually growing it beyond a certain point. It seems like Capcom was aiming to meet a minimum of $250K starting with Street Fighter V, and these DLC sales were driving that to meet that minimum. Essentially, Capcom is pocketing the difference in the rare instance where the sales generated more than the pricing they were aiming for. They would just pocket the difference. So this stopped, I believe, near the end of Street Fighter V. They at least did one through Championship Edition. I don't remember if they went all the way through the final season of Street Fighter V doing the DLC stages for Capcom Pro Tour or not. But they stopped really advertising how much they were contributing to the prize pool from the Capcom Pro Tour DLC. It became a lot more low-key about like how this operated, and come Street Fighter 6, it just went away. This whole initiative just completely went away. So there's other models that have been explored before to fund esports and to capitalize on fan engagement without it being just like a cash grab that would shrink the potential audience. I feel this is just antithetical to how Capcom Cup is set up.